Got
All right. So what I always like to do when we start these is think about where you want to go with your company because it starts really with the company, right? And your sales team is just really a derivative of that. So I my favorite sales letter ever written was The Tale of Two Men that were starting their career. It's the Wall Street Journal business letter. I'm going to do a version of that, which is The Tale of Two Business Owners. The first business owner has consistent growth in revenue, is able to take vacations, doesn't deal with hockey sticks, isn't on a roller coaster 24/7, hires salespeople and they stick around, doesn't have their heart broken by salespeople and sales hires, has a process that weeds out their best friend's child who is a great caddy and your best friend thinks that they should be a salesperson for your business. Brad is smiling and laughing because he's had that happen and sees that happen all the time. These things are actual problems that we have had to solve for clients. That's business owner A. His life is rosy, or as rosy as a business owner's life could be. You know what they say? It's you manage euphoria and fear. You got the yin and the yang of it. Business owner B doesn't have a process, is constantly churning through his salespeople. They start and he loses them within 90 days. He or she loses them within 90 days. They come on and they're not productive. And he's had his heart broken over and over and is really a victim of just hiring warm bodies and hopes that they will be a successful salesperson. So today is really your canvas, a wide open masterpiece, and hopefully you're going to learn some things. We're going to go deep on some parts, and we're going to go gloss over some others. But my goal is to help you figure out how to hire your next salesperson, and most importantly, set them up for success. Right? But this isn't just about today and tomorrow. This is really about really putting a revenue machine into your system and your business, but also thinking about your valuation. I thought it was so critical of how Brad works with his companies in thinking of what does exits look like, what do valuations look like, how do we work with family-owned businesses, but really as a business owner, sometimes your biggest asset is your business. So how do we maximize your valuations and evaluations so you could drive your EBITDA? Just a little bit of data to ground us. If you look at most businesses, the bulk of small businesses are unfortunately under a $500,000 in sales, right? So our goal is to get you to whatever revenue number that you want to do that. When we did some work in a private equity owned company with some private equity partners, we looked at the one common denominator that drove a company to $1 million in revenue and above, and it was that they had at least one salesperson. The company had to have at least one salesperson. A company that was producing far greater than $1 million in revenue. So if we go back and look at this, so that would be the top 11% of all small businesses. They had a sales team. Sales team can be defined as two salespeople or more. When we look at rep production across all life products, all different SIC codes, this is where the average transaction, anywhere from $1,000 and above. We see that their average revenue is 400,000 to about $1,200,000 once we get them fully onboarded. So we want to get you off the revenue roller coaster. We want to get you off hockey sticks. We want to get you off faint of heart, really, of how do I drive revenue into my business. Here's some stats to ground us even more so, right? So the average turnover for a rep is 35%. That's substantially higher than the average turnover for any other employee in any businesses. 30% of all new reps leave within the first 90 days for a number of reasons. But if we're going to get deep into the reasons why they are leaving you, it takes you 4 to 5 months to get a rep into your system, right? To hire that rep. And the average tenure of a rep is only 18 months. The sad part of that is it takes us 15 months to get them to be fully functioning and at their max production. And so we really only get 3 months of all of our efforts in these folks. This is not an indictment on sales training, but it is a little bit of what we have out there and what's going to kind of clog your pipeline if you ever run an ad for salespeople, or you do a post on LinkedIn, or you do something on Indeed. 55% of the people that quote unquote are making their living as salespeople don't have the right skills. So they are not functioning as a salesperson. They're probably functioning as an order taker. And if that's what you need, that's fine. But you have to kind of know what the skill set is that you need for the roles that you have within your companies, right? So you got a yin and a yang. You got to hire them objectively, right? So you don't hire your best friend's son. You have to have a process to get them onboarded. You got to give them the tools, the training, the touch points, really, and you have to manage them on a daily basis. So when we look at putting together a sales machine, if you will, and really a sales team process, it goes into these really categories. Makes the most common thing that we have to do is get the right people on the bus, right? So the right people, we're in the throes of watching football here in the last couple of weeks. So the best and the brightest are playing. The right people are hopefully on the right teams, and they're moving things through. Obviously, I had my heart broken last night with Notre Dame, but other than that, everything is going well. They need a playbook, much like a football team has a playbook that gets adjusted based on what is happening, right? So if you look at last night's game, they were at zone defense. They had to go to man at times, right? So you have a playbook that you start with, but that playbook gets adjusted based on the economic times, based on competition, based on what's going on in the marketplace. You need a process and a system for coaching that person. You cannot hire them, set it and forget it. That's setting them up for failure. You need the tools and tech to drive them to win. You need a payment structure, i.e. a commission plan that drives your incentives. So what I mean by that is a lot of times we come in companies, and one of the first things we look at is the payment structure. And many times the payment structure is misaligned, i.e. they are paying a lot on commissions for house accounts, right? Or they're paying a lot on commissions to SDRs for meetings that don't close or meetings that don't even show up. So we look at the commission structure in every client that we are in and really aligning it for the business owner to drive revenue and to drive profit, most importantly, in EBITDA. And then you have to up-level your sales management, your leadership. Right? Most people just kind of wing it. They trust their gut. They have old and outdated scripts. They don't have a playbook. If they have a playbook, it written when they first started the company. Nothing is really set up to make the salesperson successful. So if you go back to the one slide, we could see why they're leaving us within 90 days. We could see why they are not getting up to speed within 13 months, right? So we want to set that out aside and really set a platform so that they are successful, right? And go ahead, Mark.
How many businesses, on the smaller side actually even have that playbook? Then, one of the things that we run into businesses, and how many of them don't really even have a handbook, which, is one issue, not even, but how many don't have a playbook for their sales teams, or actually they have a playbook for their sales teams?
So that's two-part question. I would say probably 20 to 30% of them have some type of playbook, but unfortunately, the playbook that they have is not useful. And I'm going to show you some examples of that. They have some scripts, right? They have some old calls that they are going to give the person to review, but the playbook was created 2 years ago, 3 years ago. It is a much different selling environment, right? The scripts are not dynamic. So I'd say about 25% of the people that we see have playbooks, but all of them have to be chucked, right? Or they give us a good foundation, but you really constantly need to be updating them, if you will.
Okay.
So 50% of salespeople hit their quota, right? So that's globally. We talked about the turnover. We talked about why they are turning over. These are the reasons why they're leaving. Really, the number one reason is the bulk of it, the lack of development, management, and training. High pressure and compensation. Well, they knew the comp plan, so I'm not buying that. High pressure. This is obviously a pay for results and pay for performance position, so I'm not buying that. But really, the lack of development, management, and training. I do say that we own some of the unrealistic expectations. A lot of times when we take over for clients, and we start interviewing the sales team, is like, hey, I was told I can make X and I'm substantially low. I can't even come close to that. We now have to get in and build them and show them what the how to maximize the commission structure, what their activity needs to be to get to that. And no one's done that. And we kind of call that what winning looks like. And we kind of walk them through an Excel spreadsheet or Google sheet of what they need to do and how they need to maximize their compensation so they can get to what their expectation is. So, obviously the system is broken. We want to create a new one. We talked a little bit about that. So these are the 6 things that you need to do as a business owner. Right? These are kind of the flow charts that we've created when we look globally at the business, not just at hiring, but globally at the business. So if you look at the playbook, Mark, this is to answer your question. They may have number 2, which is scripts, but they don't have scripts for all different situations. They definitely are not well defined on their ICP. They think that they have a really broad defined ideal customer profile as ICP. Some people call it avatar, target accounts, target customers, but they also need to kind of know what the pain drivers are. And then there's the objection handling scripts, right? So what does that look like? If they say this, how do we say this? What are the talking points? They may have that, right? They might have that, but they're really maybe 30,000 foot. So we need much deeper talking points. All the pitch decks and collateral probably needs to be updated. They don't have any practice and audits. They don't have what good emails looks like, what good texts look like, and they don't have really well-defined ICPs and testimonials and case studies. They have testimonials probably on their website, but they're very broad. They're very platitude, right? Great company to work with. I enjoyed it. They were wonderful. They returned my phone call. It's like motherhood and apple pie, right? And then they don't have good LinkedIn outreach strategies and social posts that their team could do some social selling with. Right. So this goes back to some of this. This is actually a script that we had for a client. I took it off fast so you didn't see who it was, but this is what they think that a script is. When we come in, we kind of flow chart the script out so it's visually appealing and the salesperson can kind of see where they need to be and all the different, let's say, phases of the script. So when you're creating a script for your team, you really want to have it flow charted out. For the call analysis, we really kind of create this so they could go through and the person could, i.e. the new salesperson, once they have a calls that they're listening to, they could evaluate them. And once they start doing their own, they could start evaluating their sales call. And it makes it more objective when you and your sales leaders are sitting down and walking them through what a good call is and what a bad call is. Right? These are objection battle cards. Obviously, there's 4 objections. We all know what these are. I want to talk to my spouse, my partner. I want to think about it. Now's not the right time or something else, right? So we have to kind of give them the scripting of how to fix that. So we create out flowcharts and battle cards for what those look like. Right. So you as the business owner, you got to create the environment. Either you have to do the hard work of rolling up your sleeves, or you have to go out and have somebody do this for you, because we really want you to maximize your return on investment of every salesperson. Right. So how to get the right people on the bus. This is the number one thing that most people have had their hearts broken. First thing we want you to do is really write a really good direct response ad for this. Right? Can you share again instead? Megan, what's your question? I'm sorry, I got 3 screens going and I didn't catch your question.
No worries. I was just wondering if you can share. I wanted to dive a little bit deeper into what you created instead of having a script. You had that flow.
Sure.
Just wondering if you can kind of talk through that just a little bit.
Sure. This.
No, back a couple more, I think. That's the objection. It was the scripts.
So this is the script and this is the flow chart of the script. Can you see that?
Wait a minute. Yes, that one right there. I'm sorry.
Okay. All right. So if you think about a good script, every script has certain components to it. And so what we want to do is really help them with guides, right? So a script should be a guide rail. It's not word to word verbatim, because then they become almost robotic. But it's going to have an opening, right? So really kind of open. How does it open? This is for one client. There's different types of scripts that we normally have. Then we really want to get into just this is a pre-call, so this is not a demo script. Then we want to get to what's the pain or the problem, right? So we want to get to why are we here? What are we trying to solve? How do we solve for X? How long has X been going on? So now we're breaking it into the current state. What's the pain and problem? Okay, I got it. So an example would be what Mark had shared with us, which was the the client maybe didn't get their paperwork done correctly. So now we know what the goal and the outcome is. Now there might be some roadblocks, right? So there's always going to be some objections that we're going to deal with. I need to know what those are and try to get to those, right? They all fall into timing. If you're selling B2B, what's the timing for this project? What's the budget for this project? What's the decision making? In a B2C, it might be a spouse. In a B2B, if you're selling to a business owner, it might be a partner. It might be a boss, right? Somebody's going to have to provide approval. So I want to know who that is. Then the cost of inaction. So if we do nothing, which we lose to status quo, i.e. doing nothing, more than we lose to competition, right? And there's a great book on this called The Jolt Effect, and it's written by the guys that wrote Challenger Sale. I would highly recommend that if you're losing a lot of deals to status quo. So you need to get out of what's the cost of inaction. Now let's agree, see if you could kind of move them, walk them through. Then you walk them through the offer if it's a one-call close. If not, many times they're not one-call closes. So you're going to stop right here. Right now, then you're going to do a demonstration, or you're going to do a presentation of findings, or you're going to say, okay, based on everything you told me, here's what I think we could do from a marketing plan perspective. And I'm just using that as a randomness. So then that would be kind of the offer stage. That might be more customized. And so that's a different type of script that you want to provide for your folks. And then you really want to talk about closing, right? So what does conversion look like? What does closing look like? And you want to script that. And I will spend more time on this with new reps than anything else. More on this than anything else. They got to get this really well. They got to open the case really well. They got to open the presentation really well. But this is where they get themselves straight, right? So this is where they kind of get themselves in a jimmy. They don't know how to close. They don't ask for it. If they have a high propensity to want to be nice, i.e. in your disc profile or your OMG profile, or however you're profiling your team, you got to see what they look like. And certain people and let's call it, certain personality profiles will have different problems at different stages of the sales process. And so I need to know where to coach them. Did that answer your question, Megan? I want to make sure I'm giving you what
Yes, this is great. Thank you so much.
Yeah. And we'll make sure you get copies of everything that we have. You could email me and we'll get you that.
Hey, Nick.
Yeah, go ahead.
I guess I don't want to understate the behavioral aspect of that, right? Because we're all human and we're all those things. And to your point of at each behavioral style will have a problem in some point of that situation, whether it's the initial contact, the initial call, or the close, or the demonstration, or whatever it is. Each behavior has its own unique opportunities in that process for propensity not to want to do those things.
100%. I mean, when we listen to call, and I think, Brad, you're spot on with that. When we listen to calls, I don't even have to know who it is. If I could read the call and I could see, and I can know who the sales rep is because I know what their disc profile is, right, or their OMG profile. And I highly recommend you do one of those, right?
Correct.
OMG is great. Disc is probably a little bit more cost effective. There's some other ones out there too. It doesn't mean that they're bad because I'm not naming them. It just means that I just can only learn a couple of them, right? Because there's so many, you can't be a master at all. But their personality profile. And this is why I believe when one of the first slides I had, 55% of the people do not have the skill set. I actually think that if we drill down further, they don't have the personality type for sales, right? They have a high propensity to want to be liked. They may think that they're a people person. Well, high propensity to want to be liked will never make people uncomfortable, i.e. ask for the order. They will never challenge and deal with objections, right? Because of the fact that they don't want to break rapport. If you talk to them, well, why didn't you push back on that? Why didn't I wanted to keep rapport? It's really their profile of who they are and what their behavior and their motivators are. And we all think that we could change. it takes a long time to change. So great points, and I concur, Brad. I think we don't, as leaders, we don't spend enough time on that, but especially in sales, we don't spend enough time on that to get people to where they need to go. And that's what this section is going to talk about. So on your direct response ad, you need to call out specific behaviors that you're looking for. If it is a outbound first shop, right, i.e. people on the phone, we call that out in the ad, right? If you are afraid of the phone, do not answer this ad. Now, they'll still answer the ad, right? So they're still going to muck you up because Indeed makes it really, really easy to respond. And so does, so do all the other platforms. But you want to be as open and honest as you can with people. Say, hey, we're a phone first shop, right? You're going to be on the phone making 50 to 100 dials in the morning and 50 to 100 dials in the afternoon. I want you to know that getting into this, right? And then you got to run them through a pre-screening, but also I really want you to know kind of who they are, right? So you really want to dig down deep into their personality profile because it's going to make you a better manager and leader with them also, but I also don't want you hiring the wrong person. I have been hiring sales. I'm going to date myself, Mark, but I've been hiring salespeople since 1990s. They are the best at interviewing. They're phenomenal. They are the best people at interviewing. They will tell you all the right things. They are the best at getting the job. Where they struggle with is the performance in the job, right? Where they struggle with is the execution of the daily duties. And so we are always very cautious at looking to people. The other thing that I want you to really understand is when you're hiring people is making sure that you have the right person for the right job. And what I mean by that is we took over for a client and he was lamenting because he had a bunch of salespeople. He was in the marketing and communications, digital marketing communication, a bunch of people that came out of Google. And he says they can't sell. They can't sell for me. He was a scrappy startup. He had been around for a little bit. He was probably about $1 million in revenue. I said, yeah, no one has to sell Google. People buy Google, right? You need to be on that platform. So they're used to coming out of big brands, i.e. Salesforce in the tech space, or big dominant brands, and you're a scrappy startup, they're going to have probably difficulty in succeeding in your environment because of the fact that 9 out of 10 times they have used the brand name to open up doors. They have used the brand name to move the deal through or get the deal closed. So you need to know that when you are recruiting, right? So we want them write the ads. We kind of have where do we post these ads? They're all over the place. There's so many different sources for this. You always want to test all these different platforms. Especially if you're hiring for salespeople, my magic mouse moved fast. I've had a lot of success, especially part-time salespeople and phone salespeople on actor job sites or actor sites because of the fact that they're used to rejection. They're used to reading scripts. They're used to making the scripts their own. We've had a lot of success on that. So, always kind of be looking for different sources and I test. So if you go back to the 90s when I started this, my avatar for a salesperson was probably somebody that played sports, somebody that was coachable, right? Now I've added, well, if they've been in the arts, right, and they are coachable, they're used to rejection, they're used to getting that constant feedback and making the adjustments. And so that's somebody that I'm looking for, right? I want you always to be recruiting because we've learned that they're going to leave us, right? So I don't want you to have your heart broken, nor do I ever want you to be exposed. 9 out of 10 times the business owner doesn't want to get back on the phones, right? So I want you to always be filling a pipeline of people that could do the sales job for you. Run them through a process. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, when we were working together, you and I used to joke when there were new salespeople coming, getting offers were put out. Were they going to show up, and how long would they last? Is that still? If you hear about like the quiet quitting and other things now, how much of an issue is that still?
Different industries, I think it's at tech sales. They're all looking. It's tough. It's tough to get deals done, right? There was a lot of easy money, as Brad and I were talking about in the beginning, right? There was a lot of money floating around. So there was a lot of people that, deals were getting done. It's tougher now. Deals are longer and getting elongated. They're flying. They're going to go to different industries. if you're an AI startup, you're gonna have your pick of people that kind of come work for you. So different industries are doing fine. The traditional ones are doing fine, if they have people, just because people need the services at always, right? So it just depends on how much in demand is it. People aren't looking to change out a lot of SaaS software, right? If I got a CRM, the CRM is fine. I don't need a new one, right? And so that's taken a lot longer. Quiet quitting, I think they're getting they're getting showed the door faster, right? I think companies are much quicker to eliminate headcount, especially if they're pre-revenue or if they've got funding, and they're looking at their burn rate. So,
Okay.
but when you're running them through a process, do you want them to respond to the ad? Before I got on this call to give this presentation, I was just watching some videos for one of my clients of people that actually sent the video like we were told them to do in the ad. He didn't do that great. He thought he was a comedian, so we're gonna have to have him do another one before we can send it to the client, right? If you're a heavy write or a heavy proposal, have them send you a sample letter of them writing. Right nowadays, AI, you don't really know whether it's going to be. Walk them through, have them describe their sales process, have them describe what they do the first day or two that they would be on the job, and then have them sell you something, right? Here's what it looks like. We talk a lot about the assessment, the benchmark for sales for grit, right? These are all the things that I'm looking for. A lot of times you could have an outside third party, a friend that's in sales, a friend that's in sales leadership that is emotionally attached to your business. I would have them interview the person, even if it's just for 5 to 10 minutes. The old analogy is a gun knows a gun, right? That's from a great Western, right? So just have them talk to the person to see, okay, does he know what he's talking about? Does he or she know what they're talking about? Because sometimes we become emotionally involved in hiring the person, right? Walking through a mock sales process. And then how do you know if you're going to be successful? So you ask yourself these questions, right? And then now you got to kind of check references. It's not as easy to check references as it was maybe a long time ago, but you got to really do some things. And then you make them an offer, right? And it goes back to what Mark was saying, are they going to show up? So you got to send it to them in writing. I like to Federal Express the offer, so something comes into the house. Send them a shock and awe box once they say yes, and then send something to the family, whether it's a dinner or swag or something of that. So now you've got the whole family involved in the yes or no of the decision. Here's how to onboard them real quick, right? You got to just figure out and make sure that it's going on. Remember, we got 90 days that we got to get them to yes. And it's not just yes on day one, it's 90 days to keep them into the fold. So now that we have them, we want to keep them, right? We've talked about the stats of what they're going on. When they come in, you've got to go through, here's how you make your number. Here's how you make your income. Here is the plan. Here's how you qualify for spiffs. I will walk them through. Here's how you qualify for bonus. Here's how you qualify for spiffs. And you have to remind them of that within the first 30 days and the first 90 days. You have to constantly going back and showing them the plan. You want to go deep on your training. You want to set them up for success, right? Onboarding, you want to know their birthdays, their anniversaries, what their favorite drink is. Have them be a buddy, but make sure the buddy actually wants to be a buddy. And then at the end of the onboarding process, you have to realize you have to constantly be selling them. So we talked a little bit about it in the beginning, the tale of two businesses. One had a process for hiring and onboarding and making salespeople success, and the other business that didn't. I hope today we've given you some tools so that you could be the first business owner. I want to thank the sponsor, Insperity. They are phenomenal for doing this. Great company. If you are clients of theirs, phenomenal. If not, please take a look at them. And I also want to thank my other partner, Brad, the blue collar company, Nobia, and take a look at his podcast. So there you go. Anything else? So
you were episode 103, Nick, just so you know.
I am 103. All right, lucky number one. I'm going to go buy a lottery ticket, Brad. I'm going to buy 103 on the scratch off.
Megan, Saul, any questions or comments? Anything you want to pipe in?
Yeah, so thanks. I think that was great. I totally agree with you, Nick. So just a little bit background about me. I act as a fractional chief revenue officer for startups that are in founder-led growth and trying to pivot over to predictable revenue. So I wholeheartedly agree with everything you said. I look at things like marketing, sales, and customer success because that's your revenue engine, right? So I want to make sure all those are set up properly. In the beginning, when you set them up, you kind of build them out in silos. Then you take a RevOps approach and you try to get rid of all the roadblocks in between. So the one thing that I did want to point out, have you ever read a book called Sales Dogs?
Sales dogs?
Yeah.
No.
Oh God, first time I read it was over 20 years ago. I think it's a great book. It's by Blair Singer. And essentially, I make all my salespeople read that.
Okay.
Because what it does is it really shows them what their personality is. And going back to what you were saying, I think that when it comes to, if you can understand a person's personality, then you can put them in the right position. So he in the book, they compare salespeople to 3 or 5 different breeds of dogs, right? So like the golden retriever is the kind that will do anything to build a relationship and help the customer out as much as possible. That person, yeah, that person is ideal for customer success. Then you've got your pit bull, which are great for being an SDR, getting on the phone, calling people up. And you've got your Chihuahua, who's the technical person, really wants to delve deeper into it. But I'll let you read it. It's a great read.
Okay.
So what I tend to do is when it comes to sales, I will split the sales team off. I'll create SDRs or I'll bring in SDRs for the top of the funnel and then account execs on the bottom of the funnel. And the reason I do that is because the account execs, I want them to build a relationship and be that trusted advisor. I follow the Challenger sales, love it. Funny thing about Challenger sales, the same guy that wrote Spin Selling, and he's never sold a thing in his life, but he did the research, which is hilarious to me. Yeah, so that's what I tend to. But the SDRs are, as you mentioned, they're picking up the phone. So if you've got an account exec doing SDR work, they're going to get upset and they're going to get frustrated. They're going to leave. So that's how I end up breaking out the team.
Love it. You know, it is, and everything, you go into 15 different companies have the 15 different approaches, right? I think the SDR work, BDR depends on, he probably is more of a business development rep, getting new deals in or new appointments in. I think it's probably one of the hardest jobs in sales. I also think, this is my personal bias, but what I see is that we're creating 2 to 3 generations of AEs that don't know how to prospect. And more companies, especially, we're kind of being brought in to say, is this SDR right paying for itself, right? What is it costing us to generate these meetings, especially if the meetings aren't closing? So it'll be interesting to see how it shakes out, and if in 5 years the SDR BDR is still around or not. But I think we are creating AEs that do not know how to prospect or won't prospect. I
totally agree with that. I think AI is going to get rid of SDRs, BDRs.
Oh, sure. Especially I think it's going to take, I think you used to need 1 to 2 to kind of keep one AE full. And I think with AI, with the amount of research that AI could do for you, with the AI calling and AI, email processing, I think now you could get down to a half of an SDR to kind of keep 2 AEs full.
Absolutely.
So, Nick, and Saul, also for you, what are your favorite tools? Because an SDR needs a number to call. So many companies aren't even putting phone numbers on their websites anymore. So what are the tools that you're using to get the SDR the information that they need?
Well, I think there's so many different data scrapers out there, right?
Zoom info.
That I think that's got 2 camps, right? One camp loves it, the other camp hates it.
Correct.
I'm probably closer to the second than the latter than the former. I think There's Prospeo, is a good scraper out there. So it just depends how much you want to spend. Brandon Blanchard's, I forget the name of it. I think it's something AI, is a pretty good
Apollo?
LinkedIn scraper. Apollo's pretty good. The bigger question though, Mark, is where do your people sit, right? So if your prospects aren't sitting on LinkedIn, having data scrapers scraping off of LinkedIn isn't all that great. A lot of the data in B2B is dated on day one, right? It goes back to the old days of, I've been around long enough. We were buying Info USA information, right? And that was dated because the average tenure of, we saw the average tenure of a salesperson, the average tenure of a sales leader is 14 to 18 months, right? So, you got to constantly be scraping that information using tools, scraping it off of LinkedIn, Sales Navigator, right? I like the stuff that they're doing. It was Titan X is kind of making sure that these numbers, you got to get into the numbers that will pick up, right? So they're kind of running it through logarithms to say these are your top numbers that will pick up. These are your second tier numbers that will pick up. These are your third tier numbers that will pick up. COVID, everybody used their cell phones, so now there's more cell phones into the marketplace. Where now people are complaining that why you're calling my cell phone. But there's so many data sources out there. The key is how much is it refreshed? How much are they cleaning it? And then you got to run it through your own sources too.
Yeah,
And I agree with Nick there. I think that the first thing I tell my the startups that I work with is, what is your ICP? Who are you going after? And then I actually have them go do a TAM, SAM, SOM analysis. And when I do the SOM, I break it up into small, medium, and large. And the reason I do that is because a small customer is going to have vastly different needs. They're going to be going to different social media sites than a large customer will. And then once I determine that and we figure out, okay, well, which size company do we want to go after? Then you know exactly where that company is going to be spending most of their time, where they're going to be as far as social media. And then I use various tools. Zoom Info, I agree with Nick. I'm on the, I'm not a fan of it. I think it's stupid expensive, and half their information, or more than half their information, is incorrect. Apollo is a great tool. HubSpot Insights is awesome. They actually do a really good job. There's various other tools out there that you can use for data enrichment. But even before you get to data enrichment, as Nick had mentioned, you've got to have a process in place, and the SDRs need to follow that process. Once you have that process in place, then you do data enrichment, and the SDRs follow the process. But that is the approach that I end up taking.
Whoever figures out intent data is going to be a billionaire, right? If we could ever figure out trigger and intent data in sales, that is the key. So go ahead, Mark. What was your question? I'm sorry, I stepped on you.
Again, no, not a problem. And again, for anyone on here, what is, and I'm sure the answer is depends upon the business, but is there just an overall minimum recommendation from a rinse and repeat? You put into place a particular process. Times change, the data changes. What you're getting from the field is going to add more information about how things are going. What do you recommend to businesses, from a review and adjust time schedule?
Everything moves so fast. You got leading and lagging indicators, right, for deal flow. I think I agree with Brad, ABC. I think a lot of it depends on how long historically deal flow takes, right? So are you a quick shop, i.e. you're transactional, you're moving, your one call closes, or are you a 90-day deal flow? They're going out on 3 bids. So everything is different. We used to watch for some industries, we watch the UPS and the Federal Express and their quarterlies. And are more things being shipped? Therefore, the economy is moving faster. We could probably not worry so much, right? If they start pulling back, right? Different industries start pulling back, we're going to have to adjust, right? Because now our messaging is different. Your messaging in times of contraction is different than times of aggressiveness people are buying, right? It goes back to I think Megan asked the question, somebody in the SaaS environment 4 years ago, 3 years ago, when money was floating and everybody was hiring, adding headcounts, and it was just easy, right? And we found out right now that they're order takers. And so they're bringing guys like I and Sal and Brad and everybody in because of the fact that nothing's getting moved. So I like looking at the playbook because I think the bigger question mark is, are the teams adhering to the playbook? And I think the bigger question is, am I auditing and listening and have a process to make sure that they are not off the rails, off the reservation, kind of taking it on themselves? And that's the bigger issue. And then I like to look at it. I like it just globally. If I'm a quick house, i.e. one call close, two call close, average transaction, $20,000, $30,000, probably every quarter to 6 months on the playbook. So that's me. But
that works.
Sometimes you get brought, like when I started my business, we create the playbook, and that was it. Walk away. Now you call the client to check in, and you're like, hey, did you guys, how's that going? Oh, we didn't implement it. We got busy, right? So sometimes they need somebody there to guide them through on the implementation of it and make sure that they use it, right? And that's kind of why we changed our model to being involved on a monthly basis, to making sure that they're getting all the goodness out of it. So.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I mean, 3 years, ready when they are. Can you imagine having to build a pipeline for a brand new salesperson with a 3-year deal flow, right? How do how are they? You got to just stay. How are they filling that funnel 24/7? So, all right. Well, Megan's gone. Hey, this was great. Once again, if you have any questions, take a look. Reach out to us, Megan. If we have her information, Mark, we send her the presentation.
I've got it.
Is it?
Yeah, Brad. It's easy. Nick, Brad, and it's all. I'll just send everyone's information. Since it's just 4 of us. Saul, any objections to my including you and getting your information over to Nick and Brad?
Please do.
If
there's anything I can do to help, just feel free to reach out to me.
Sure. Excellent. All right, Mark. Thank you, Inspirity.
Thank you. Everyone, have a great and warm rest of your day. Take care.
Thank you.
Thank you,
care,
guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.